right, good morning, everyone. My Tuesday live. This is going to be a regular thing with Brandon, B2R Investing. Morning, Brandon.
Morning.
And we got returning. He was one of my regulars for a while, and you may not. He changed, well, not changed, but he's his handle on his screen now is Denver. You may have heard him as Ned before, but welcome, Denver. It's been a long time, man.
Hey y'all, how's it going?
Yeah, so maybe for the new people, new subscribers, maybe just give a quick update on who Denver is and where do you invest, I guess.
My name is Denver. I'm in New Orleans slash the greater New Orleans region. And I've got, how many I've sold some since we last spoke. So I've got 25 units. That's just two buildings. I sold one of my fourplexes. It was just kind of insurance rates killed the deal. So insurance went from 4,500 to 25,000.
That is happening for a lot of people.
Wow.
Brandon, like I said, we're gonna do a Tuesday regular thing. He's gonna be a day two speaker at the ORAD event in February. Brandon kind of wanted to bring up this topic. I mean, we kind of playfully text each other back and forth, making trouble to each other. But he wanted to kind of dig into kind of what is enough in your journey or your portfolio size. And I felt Denver was the perfect individual to bring on because I know Denver before, I don't know if it changed, it's been a while, but he definitely wanted a bigger size portfolio. So maybe quickly, Denver, do you still kind of feel that way?
Yeah. But it's mostly because I'm a third generation family business owner. And so I kind of grew up in an environment where everything was kind of, I've got 13 people in my generation in the but some are in the business, some are receiving our shareholders, and in my mind, I've tried to run a smaller portfolio for a long time, and I'm just personally used to a larger business where I have people, and the problem with that is, I think to some degree when you're used to a larger business, you have to be okay with some inefficiencies. Whereas like a lot of smaller businesses, the pennies in your hours really super matter. Whereas when you get to a certain point, there's enough margin to where it's like you can bring somebody on to free up your time. Whereas that's not an option if you're under a certain size.
All right, I love that. So, Brandon, I mean, why was this top of mind for you, this kind of topic right now?
Yeah, just thinking because I'm getting close to the end, and I would agree with Denver. I think the question then is, what is your goals? I think you can't answer that for someone other before asking, what are you trying to accomplish and what are your goals? And in context, is this talking about real estate? Is this talking about other businesses? Which I grew up in a small business family too, and trying to figure out is, the question you ask is real estate a supplement to financial freedom, or is it to completely fund the retirement and your financial freedom? That depends too. That answer.
All right. And then, like I said, I think people may have forgot or like it's been a while. I know Denver's talked about it before on the channel. You had some, I guess you can say, health issues or scares when you were younger, right? Does that in any way impact, your decision on what size portfolio or goals you have in this?
Talking about me specifically?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've done a lot of just general studying and research and going to seminars and learning about family business in general, and talk with a lot of consultants over the years trying to figure out how do we best transition assets and keep the business going to the next generation and stuff like that. And one of the things that always kind of stuck out to me was it seems like one of the main reasons for failure of family wealth or family businesses they're kind of one and one the same, depending. I guess you don't have to have a business to have wealth, but you get the idea. The financial needs and cash flow requirements of the family tend to be the number one killer of family businesses. So in my mind, I kind of viewed real estate as the ability to, how do I own a business and then create something that's relatively passive? We all know real estate's not truly passive, but relatively passive to where I can still focus on the business, take the cash flow from that, invest it in a cash flowing asset, so that if I at any point need to decide to not pay myself from the business because the business needs the cash, I can do that. Whereas a lot of families, if they're in a situation where, hey, the market shifts, we need to make some moves, we need to reinvest, we need to cut dividends or distributions or whatever for a few years, or by either completely or partially, a lot of families and owners can't do that.
Brandon, you want to touch on any of that?
No, I understand a lot of what he's saying, and I've thought through some of that owning a small business too. I'm looking at more of the asset, the real estate assets being the primary contributor to retirement, to financial freedom. I do have a business too. I don't intend, probably not going to keep it for the next generation. So I'll be selling that business here in the next few years. And so I'm looking at that income, but just saying, talking about what I think about in cash flow to the majority of the audience here that are W-2 employees. They are becoming more of a lifestyle investor, and they're looking to take their savings. They've been investing it in real estate, and they're trying to replace their W-2 income. I would think that's the majority of the audience here that is looking at that, and what is that number? And I do like what Dion talks about, but Denver, you talked about it too. You've got to have some margin, because something's going to happen. It's not an if, there is going to be something. And what I love about that thinking is you're figuring out, okay, what is my expenses that I expect when I'm in, financial freedom, and then having a margin. I know, Dion's extremely conservative with that. I think his is 4x or 5x his needs. I'm looking at like 50% over what I expect to have as expenses, and then backing into that. And it's also depending on where you live, looking at around the country. If you're in a predominantly blue state where it's harder, less competition of new construction, you can get higher cash flow once you're in it, higher cash flow versus where I'm at in Texas, where there's lots of new construction. There is not as that high growth of rents and inflation. So you have to have some numbers higher. I'm looking at, for me, I'm here at 12 properties built, 12 units, moving to 14. My ultimate goal, backing into it, of 22 doors is where I want to be, with an average cash flow of around 700, puts me at the 15,000, 16,000 range. Expecting my lifestyle expenses to be somewhere in that 8,000 to 9,000. I know I'm going to say a higher number than a lot of people talking about it, but then having that margin. And then when I sell the business, what that business, that's extra supplemental over and above. But I want to make my number with real estate be what I think I'm going to only have. And then everything after that is bonus. Because I've watched family and I've watched people in life, they work. I think about this, and it did mark my life watching my father. And this is why I do think about it. So Mark, you asked me, I've been thinking about that. And I'm at that horizon. I'm starting to see the end here pretty soon, here in the next 4 years or so. That my father worked all his life till the very end, to where he couldn't work, and literally spent the last 2.5 months bedridden, fighting for his life. And he never had that free time to have time to mentor, had time to make an impact as much. I mean, he made an impact, I will say that, but he didn't have that free time. And I want to get to that free time and say, you know what? I don't have to have, you want to say, whatever that number is, have it all. And then I've been working and then I never get time for that freedom. So I'm choosing to be content with a number and say, that's where I want to be so that I can have that freedom time, spend with the family, make an impact, spend more time on my YouTube channel. I'm in that transition. That's why I started the YouTube channel a year ago, is I'm transitioning to that impact effect. I know that's a long answer, but I'll stop there.
No, that was great. I think that also touches on hopefully your book sales at some point. You know, you are working on a book. Will create some, like you're saying, revenue and impact and help people. But Denver, I think there's a lot of people are commenting more about your name in the chat right now. Like Hyder saying that's definitely a stage name, and Ike is saying it's like sounds like a rental paint. Your Denver Gray.
Like a rental, what?
Like paint for painting.
Oh.
But yeah, to Brandon's point, Denver, I mean, I think like that's the one thing, right? You have this business, like you're saying, and on the other side. So the real estate is a little bit different for you than a lot of other people who are looking at the real estate more for like generating their income during retirement. So it's more like it's a place for you to funnel almost the money you're creating from the business side, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm at a different stage. I think effectively my wife and I could downsize and be financially independent just now. And so, I mean, I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, how do I make sure that we keep a structure in place where I can make sure that my grandkids don't need to work? So my horizon's a little further out, but I'm also in a situation where my dad and my grandfather all did the same thing. And so since everyone viewed so far ahead, they've kind of like the initial parts, at least somewhat, was easier for me. And, you know, it really comes down to that whole expenses thing. You know, everyone can be financially free if they just decide to be homeless. You know, you can cut your expenses pretty steep.
I never thought of it that way. I mean, but that is true. But you know, also sorry, but Brandon, I just also almost forgot to mention you. I didn't know your plan is to sell the biz. I thought you were hoping your daughter.
Well, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. She's 18. To really run it would take a lot of years, and I am ready to move on. So that is most probably the scenario is, and I've sold 2 businesses now. I'm now on my last one that I intend to either sell unless I can find the right person to run it, to have time to eventually do that, for her to get in there and do that. I've been in family businesses. We've sold family businesses. That's just my background. And that's where my perspective is. Yeah, so that is a little bit of a revelation. I hope she's not watching this today. So, but that's the plan.
I mean, we've got professional management in several of our businesses. I mean, we've got enough businesses now to where there's not enough family that's interested.
Yeah.
And then the problem is a lot of our businesses would take a lifetime to learn to run, you know, because we've been wheeling and dealing for 60 plus years. So,
right. You know, another perspective on it, if we're looking at cash flow, and this is what a lot of our group does talk about, cash flow, but Coach Carson agrees with me that wealth is a perspective. And I do think you can do both. There's another way at it. So you can look at cash flow, and I think that should be number one, is the cash flow. But also another perspective is I could get to financial freedom with growing the wealth and having that, and then maybe doing a cash out with that wealth and saying, okay, I could unload all the properties and generate, let's just say $3 million. Your goal is to get to $3 million in net worth of real estate, and then you cash that out and you're going even more passive. Either you sell it, you're selling it and creating those notes, which is more passive, or you're selling it and you're taking, let's just say it's in your pocket, 3 million, and I know I can make 6 or 7%, then you're in that 200 grand plus in something very passive. There's two ways. There's multiple ways. There's more than two, but I'm just thinking of perspectives of a cash flow method of hitting a number, or a equity or net worth method of real estate.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a local guy I know that his family had, I want to say, 1,500 units, and they got to where it was the management intensive. All the buildings were really old. Their yield on their equity position was like 2 or 3%, and they were kind of like, "Hey, this is kind of silly. If we sold these individually to people, it would make sense for them to fix them up." And because they're in like nicer areas, so the area had appreciated a lot, and the rent really hadn't. And so they 1031 through some, I don't know how the structure worked, but they ended up basically moving into a REIT.
Yep.
So they're still in real estate, but now they've got a lot more
And
cash flow.
Dividend.
Like the Delaware statutory trust, you 1031 into that like a fund, and then you get
Yeah. And they made sure to pick a fund where the funds got bylaws to where the fund can only have, I think, between like 20 and 40 or maybe 50% debt. So it's relatively low leverage, pretty safe type stuff with higher cash flow. So there's tons of things that you can do like that.
Yeah, the DST is one way to exit, especially as you get older and you don't want to deal with real estate, but you want to 1031 into a bigger asset and still get income monthly. Let's see. Hey, Andy's here. I see Chris Webb, Hyder. Good morning, everyone. Charles, I'm moving with my favorite sketchy one, man. Someone was asking. I don't know. Has anyone you willing to seller finance your business, Brandon, when it's time to sell?
I have done one, yes. It's got to be the correct situation. And I come from a banking background, so my underwriting is going to be pretty conservative. I'm not going to risk giving it to somebody that would lose it. I spent too much time. So yes, I would. And I have done that. It has to be the right metrics to make it work.
How many Aloha shirts would they have to throw in to
that's
get
right.
the deal done?
And I get to pick. My latest acquisitions have been Hawaiian shirts that for Christmas. So those are my latest acquisitions. You'll see those soon.
So Denver, what is your thought? Maybe like, I know we've kind of touched on it off camera and stuff, but like that enough or comfort zone, is it kind of like a way to like a false sense of security in a sense a little bit?
I think you naturally want to always be adjusting up. Just, you feel better if you're doing a little more than last year or whatever. And to some degree, real estate and a lot of investments like to do that, as long as you're like, let's say a lot of people use for retirement. They say the Trinity study for stocks is 4% withdrawal rate. You'll never run out. Let's say hypothetically you had a bunch of money and you did 3%. That would mean every year you could spend a little more because your portfolio growth would outpace, hypothetically. And so, I kind of view it as an adjustment thing where I don't mind personally pulling back to grow the business more. But I was also in a position where I never had to house hack, but I did anyway, just because I wanted to get so far ahead on a savings rate basis that, we still probably only spend maybe 20 to 40%, and then at that reinvestment rate, you're growing in the background so much that, or at least hypothetically, even with the ups and downs of the market, on average year, we should be doing better than last year. I mean, spending more isn't, having a better life, but the ability to choose to do so most years is nice. But that comes from being in a position where you have to create that margin, as we've been talking about, in order to get that growth. And I mean, it's kind of fungible. A lot of people put themselves in a situation where their fixed expenses aren't flexible, and they can't do that. So I mean, it depends on how much risk you want to take on. I view, I mean, Rich Dad Poor Dad did the whole your house is a liability. It's a fixed expense type thing, which we all learned is actually not true with how much taxes and insurance went up in the last few years. The old wise tale of you get to fix, I guess you fix the majority of your house note. But you can still get got. I mean, I know that was a thing in Texas with taxes, and then in Louisiana and a lot of the Gulf Coast, people are getting got by insurance right now. So I don't know if that answered your question or if I can word that better.
Well, I'm curious on which one of you pushed an old lady. I don't know. Cool guy. Thanks for stopping by. But he's saying someone's talking mad shit about us on their live right now because they know one of us pushed an old lady.
Wow.
All right. Well, not sure. Well,
I've never pushed an older one.
Hey, the Riley Oak. Good morning. Haven't seen you here before, I think. But thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. Brandon's channel also I'll put in the chat. He's also streaming right now, so you can go hop over there, subscribe there. But Brandon will be speaking day 2 at the ORAD event. Hey, Nick is here. Hold on or hodl Bitcoin taking a beating recently, but
I bet he has.
yes. But Nick putting out great content daily on the Bitcoin space.
And I think he did margin.
I believe he did.
Or he was selling options or something like that. There was something he was doing. Maybe it wasn't margin. I can't remember.
Well, with options, he should be fine as long as the call is far enough out. It depends was he selling or was he buying?
Yeah, it's all about it's a put or a call, which is I have a background in that too.
Yeah. So with options, he could be awesome or he could be real bad.
Yeah. You went
muted. We got Steve, the accidental landlord here. Good morning. He is running the Thursday accountability call in school. It's very, very detailed, very structured. So if you like that format, go check it out. But they run it on point. You have on a clock time, 1 hour, get in, get out, good information. So go check it out. But he's asking, has anyone purchased property inside of a solo 401k?
I'm going to give a perspective on this that there's enough. I have not understood any advantage when real estate's already tax advantaged, putting it in another behind a paywall that has another shell of tax advantage. I think real estate has its own shell or tax advantage, and you have more freedom with it. I just have not done that inside of another tax advantage entity or shell.
It seems like it'd be annoying to manage, to be honest. Like that's just a lot of like weird red tape where if you screw up one time, the tax consequences
Yeah. So that's why, like I said, I don't ever recommend it, but that is why I just took the bullet and liquidated it and paid the penalties and whatnot, and just I don't want to, like you said, don't deal with the red tape and all the loopholes to jump through. And just for me, it was that just makes things a lot simpler and not have all these kind of restrictions and whatnot, how to deal with it. So
did you do the COVID withdrawal thing where you
Man, why you gotta bring up like touchy subjects? But no, I just missed the window for that. By the time I got headed down this path and kind of decided on it, it was I want to say like a month after that whatever grace period or whatever it's called, but where they allowed you to take it out penalty free. But Flavio was asking, hey, hold on, what what you guys should do, get 30K cash right now or 100K in net worth with $100 cash flow monthly.
I don't fully, maybe it's going along this, well, I don't know fully. But I was going to bring up the topic, if the topic is how many doors do you, that's the way I think, how many doors do you need? The group that wants to go with higher leverage is going to need a whole lot more doors because typically their margins and their cash flow is much thinner if they're going to use the cash flow for lifestyle. They could be playing an appreciation game, but if you go, with lower leverage, and I look at 70% loan to value, I'm going to need a lot less units. Dion has done the same thing of start saving up his 25%. He's ended up needing a lot less units versus let's just say the person that pays all cash, but that could take years to save that up. They might only need five doors. It's what is that strategy and how many years is it going to take to get there and how many units is it going to take to get there?
I did put Brandon's YouTube channel in the chat. I also put Nick's Lead Pray Huddle YouTube and Instagram. So go check out Nick. Like I said, he's putting on a lot of daily content, a lot of great information there. He'll be back on live streaming on the 25th of this month. But there was a question. Oh, you guys, Nick and Denver are talking about Bitcoin and what he's doing in there. But was there another one? Have you seen Options Action? Chris Webb would say that's one of his favorite shows.
No.
Yeah, I don't watch anything on options.
I did a little bit 2 years ago with options, buying options, puts and calls, and I didn't like what it did to my lifestyle while I'm having to always be watching the market. I didn't want to do that. So I got out of doing that, always sitting there watching what's going on, because it makes you more focusing on the market. And I want a more passive lifestyle.
Yes, Chris Webb is. So Chris is a Patriots fan, and I'm a Bears fan. And we won last night, but we're going to probably battle for a long time on who has the better quarterback from the same draft. So he believes Drake May is going to be better than Caleb Williams, but only time will tell. But hey, Jeff is here, JLD Systems. He says, I missed the COVID withdrawal too. Yep. It happens, right? Jeff says he's all in for Small and Mighty. Chris said that show's on CNBC. Ultra Fire, hey, what's up, man? Let's see. Oh, what about the other two? Well, I just said I'm in real estate. I don't know how you want to introduce Brandon. You want to just quickly. Sky King Gamers is asking, what field are you folks in?
Denver, I know.
I'm in oil and gas and insurance and some other things.
Mine, I've stayed within real estate. My past, I come from basically 30 years of finance background. I started out working for a consultant CPA who was more of a tax strategist, and he taught me business analysis. Got into commercial finance for years, then went into real estate sales, did that, sold that company, and now I own a property management company where I manage others' properties and my own. And that's kind of the last business we've got is the property management company, and then the investments.
Nice. Ultra Fires just asking, you guys know a real estate billionaire named Ben Mala? Yes, I do know that name.
Mhm.
I've met him twice.
Oh, really? Recently?
One of the first times he was like back when he had like 20, 30,000 followers, I saw a couple of his videos and was like, wow, this is really good commercial stuff. And he was like, hey, it was right when he first started doing events. And he was like, hey, I just bought this hotel. We're doing some construction, so there's lots of vacancy. He's like, but if y'all want to come lease or get a room, and it was one of his Tampa hotels, y'all can come have some drinks with us at the bar. And so one of my roommates from college lives in Tampa, and I was like, I can go visit Andrew. So I hopped in the car, went down there, had a couple of drinks, ended up not hanging out with Ben, but I hung out with his he has a finance guy who runs all of his portfolio and everything in the background. He's more of like a Wall Street type banker broker type guy who runs all the finances in the background. And I was very curious how his business was structured. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot from that.
Yeah, I know I know in recent years he was taking kind of a beating on a lot of adjustable rate financing and whatnot. So I know that was a little I'm not sure how he's recovered from that, but I mean, I still see his content out there. I haven't followed it too much closely though.
I'm curious, those that are listening, what their thought is on when is enough and why, and hearing what others are thinking about. I brought this up in our school group and had a lot of interaction with it and hearing different perspectives. Well, I think there is no one right answer. There's one right answer for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Which might be wrong tomorrow.
Yeah,
could be.
Well, I think that is to Chris Webb's point, but Chris wouldn't know because he's not in school, so he wouldn't have seen your question. But
yeah,
but his point was kind of shoot, I don't know where it went, but it was talking about having an exit strategy. So kind of that's, ultimately whatever you decide on, what's very important is having some sort of exit plan or exit strategy, I guess.
Well, what I would say on the real estate side, I don't have an exit strategy. I plan to keep them. It's why I'm doing the build model so that Denver, like you said, my children and my children's children have good quality product. How I'm building them is not for doing ultra cheap just to get it going today. I'm building it thinking about decades down the road.
Yeah.
And then I'm teaching my children even today my investments and why I'm doing it. I sat down with my daughter just this weekend and it was fun to watch a light bulb go off in her own head. And I didn't have to say it. I was showing her, I'm building 2 investments starting in the next 30 days. And I was going through the financials with her, sitting down. She's also the daughter I'm bringing to the bank, meeting with the bankers. She's in the meeting. She's picking some of the products of the features of it. And then I sat down with her and going through the numbers, and she made the comment, well, I've been in Dave Ramsey stuff. Why are you doing it with debt? Why not do it all cash? So of course I've got a spreadsheet and I showed her, what with healthy leverage, the 70% like I do, it was a cash on cash return of, well, I was looking at that moment, I was looking both at cash on cash and principal pay down. It was 20%. That's the number I could remember on that. 20%. I said, all right, let's look at it. So I changed the numbers and I said, all right, let's pay all cash. Then I paid all cash and I showed the return to her. And you could see her eyes light up. She's like, wow, not all debt, not all cash, and using debt is not always bad. That wasn't me telling her. That literally was her revelation on her own. And that's what I'm believing when I'm talking about affecting my children and my children's children, it's not just giving them the asset. They also need to work. There's things you learn from working, the things you learn, but it's also, I use the principle, it's not just giving them the fish, it's teaching them how to fish, letting them learn how to handle decisions and how to handle what they're going to down the road be responsible for. That's how you continue to pass on generational wealth. It is not giving them the money. Most people that are given the money, they don't know how to handle it. They have to have the skill set, and that's what we're passing on as much as what we're giving to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect way to do it.
We look at it, and I'm going to get into it, and y'all can hate me for it, but the Trump family, regardless of the politics, I'm not talking politics. You look at their family and you read what Donald Trump did. He had his kids in the meetings, in the boardroom, in those discussions, and you look at the skill sets of his kids. They learned it in a unique way, and I'm trying to do some of those same principles as bringing my kids into some of those decisions and going through the process with me so that they know what to do down the road in the future.
So you just got me canceled. You guys mentioned COVID. You guys mentioned Trump. No, but Sky King Gamers actually was asking earlier, any AI tech startup experience? I do not have that. Either one of you?
I'm literally starting a project on it right now.
All right. Well, there you go.
More on the real estate side of it.
Interesting. All right. Well, we can dig into that once you get things off the ground and running, maybe. But Sky King Gamers, there you go. Chris Webb is asking, oil and gas. Where are you from? I get calls from my time in Dallas all the time.
New Orleans.
Let's see. Chris Webb also says, I think time will tell. I have shifted my thought from doors to income. I have to get going. I love the build model, though. Just to ask, are you building aside from PM?
These are built. Yeah, this isn't within the property management company. These are my own builds. And yes, if you want to say it, the property management company is handling a lot of the management. I do a few things because I want to keep my hands fresh and my skill set fresh. But I have a team that handles property management here in DFW for people. And then I'm more the big picture within the organization. And then I even quarterly write articles for the owners of kind of what I'm seeing that is going on in the industry, counsel of best practices of how to manage the properties, how to manage the expenses, what's going on with rents in the area. You know, I'm more the big picture person, is more my skill set.
Oops, I see some new people tuning in. I want to say good morning to Barbara. Thanks for stopping by. But she does say that's pretty smart, teaching your daughter that way. I'm trying to learn too. Well, Barbara, hit that like and subscribe button. Also, there is Brandon's YouTube channel, B2R Invest. So if you want, you can bounce over there quickly and subscribe.
Yeah, having that, you know, I've got two kids that are even more active. I've had one, this is a boy, so he's mowing the lawns. But, you know, he's out there mowing the lawns. I had him buy his lawn equipment, but we're talking about things on the property. Both of them went with me when I went to the place where we picked out the colors, the countertops, you know, what type of material, what type of the tile, the colors, just the different materials, the fixtures, the plumbing fixtures, the lighting fixtures. They got excited about that and they take more ownership. And I think anybody that has pride of ownership on anything, even if they're working within a company and they have pride in that company, they handle things differently. And so I'm trying to build that within my teenagers, that they're starting to get pride in what we're building and what I'm building, Mindy and I are building. They tend to look at it differently versus just, hey, here, you're going to be handling this down the road, versus they were a part of some of the decisions. They have a lot more pride in it, and they think of it and look at it in a different way.
Sure. I mean, like when I was when I was not very young, when I was between 15 and 18, I started out as the janitor. Then after that, I actually fought to stay in it for a few years longer, because I used to do transmission changes, oil changes. We have a fleet of vehicles. So I did car work, and then from there I was in IT, and then from there I was in accounting briefly, and then from there I've worked in basically every department of all the companies we owned at the time when I was younger, and so did my dad and his brothers.
I did the exact same thing within the family business. I told them I started out scrubbing toilets,
Yep.
and learned all aspects.
I never cut the lawn though. That was outsourced to some other company. I don't think they wanted me playing with heavy equipment.
Hyder does say yes, that the USD is a debt-based monetary system. Dave Ramsey is swimming against the tide, in my opinion. Use the tool efficiently. Nick Lead Prejado is a great YouTube channel talking about Bitcoin and has daily content. Go check that out. But he does say, I love that with the daughter, I do the same with my kids when I did real estate and as I do Bitcoin teaching.
See, I wished, and I'm doing this, my dad was a finance major, but yet they didn't talk about finances. And I don't know if that's a cultural thing of that age group of the baby boomers. My parents did not talk much about finances, other than, hey, we're tight right now, because my parents went through the oil bust in the 80s that affected our family business here in Texas. And I remember those times. But I want to teach my kids differently and letting them, at least I did, I had to learn financial literacy on my own from reading books, my own experiences in YouTube University. I'm wanting to give my kids more firsthand experience before they really need to use it, and talking to them about finances now, which I didn't get when I was young. Denver, what were your experiences?
It was interesting because I grew up in the business, I was taught how to think about business. But the thing that was, I grew up at the living room table, dining room table in the living room, and we'd be having dinner or a snack or whatever. And my dad would have a spreadsheet out, and he'd be going over this or that or investments, and he'd kind of cookie crumbs over time, and it kind of built. So I had an acumen for that, to where I was just bored as all get out when I went to business school. But what I learned from the whole Rich Dad and a lot of these, wealth-oriented books and stuff was, and especially looking around, a lot of people with this high-level acumen of business knowledge never look inward or apply it to their own lives. And it's fascinating.
I agree. I look at real estate, and I remember thinking, here I was let's just say in the sales business of real estate. I believe statistically, what I've seen, less than 5% of your real estate agents actually own property as far as investment property. They may own their home. And I'm sitting there thinking, if I'm telling everybody that they should own real estate and I'm not really all in with it, I'm a hypocrite. I'm here helping people buy and sell. And if I don't own a whole bunch myself, I'm not really a believer in it. And made that decision. I was a believer, and I dove in more and more.
Yeah. One thing I've always thought, because as a real estate agent, you don't have W-2 income. The financing has to be a little different, right?
Well, I realized when I started, yes, I learned it from the ground up, literally. I handled everything, but I began building SOPs of all the aspects of what I was doing, and realized where I was good and where I wasn't, and began to build a team, hiring a team to handle what I wasn't good at, Because I would look at, I know this is a kind of a business discussion. If I want to make, let's just say $100 an hour, what does $100 an hour jobs look like? Well, it's of course on the sales side. Well, then if I need, if I'm doing paperwork, what is that worth? Well, it may be worth $20 an hour. Well, that's the first thing I'm going to offload. I'm going to hire somebody to do the $20 an hour work so that I can work on the $100 an hour work, so on and so forth, to where if I'm wanting to make $250 an hour, what type of work does that look like? And I keep that in my grid of what I'm doing, saying, is this that I'm doing, if my goal is, I'm just going to say $200 an hour, is this $200 an hour work, or is it something else? Can I get to the spot where I spend more of my time working on that $200 an hour work versus doing the $20 an hour work?
Did you, oh, what happened?
There we are. You're on mute.
I was trying to bring up the helicopter that Charles sent me, but I guess I can't do it right now. It's going to mess up the.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you end as business grows. You keep on hiring more and more and more specialized people for more and more specialized jobs to put people in not to knock on real estate here, but in their highest and best use position that they can possibly be in. Since everyone always talks about highest and best use for property, there's a highest and best use for someone's brain as well. And that might change over time as their experience set evolves and develops. And when you first start out, it's probably important you do that grind, because then you have the knowledge to call BS on if someone's doing their job right, because you've done that job before. That was one of the reasons that I was made to work in all those different positions, not only so I learn, but also so that I have the respect of the people that I work with and for. I don't know. It's hard for me to try and think of what people maybe need to learn on stuff like this, because I started so young. That's one of the areas I struggle with, because for me, it's just like, oh yeah, it works that way. But that's not so obvious to a lot of other people. And I don't know if you run into a lot of that as well, Brandon.
What we're trying to do is we're doing these videos and trying to teach and have conversation. Is there's 4 levels of competence, and great teachers can remember when they didn't know it. And I'm not saying I'm good at this. I'm still perfecting it. I think Dion is one of the better teachers I've ever observed in my life. He can break it down and remember when he didn't know and talk people through it. But the 4 levels of competence are, level 1 is you don't know what you don't know. And somebody getting into their first purchase, they are having that bottom level. They don't know what they don't know, and they have to learn it firsthand. You can learn from books and videos to maybe 70% of it, but that final 30% takes firsthand learning and being able to explain that and remember when you didn't know. And then the second level is you know what you don't know. Now you're gaining that experience. And then, the third level is now you know what you know. And then the final is, I'm trying to remember it, is unconscious expertise. You barely can remember when you don't know. It comes so natural. You don't even have to think about it. It's not even active thinking, because you develop the skills. Denver, you're describing it. You started so early. It's become natural in you. And we're trying to walk everyone through those stages and be able to remember when we didn't know what we know now.
Yeah. It sounds kind of funny, but I find myself struggling because to a lot of this stuff. So like, for example, as I got promoted up in the family business, I got to where this is a transition I haven't mentioned before on the channel, but I just got promoted to president of one of our companies. And the board requirement for that was, or not the board, but the family said, hey, you have all this real estate stuff. You're very hands-on outside. We're proud of you. That's fun and everything, but you can't do that anymore. We need you focused here. And I said, okay. And I was like, babe, we just had kids. Would you like to take this on? Because otherwise I need to find some other way to make it more hands-off. And so I'm in the process of training my wife, and I'm hitting all of these spots where I'm like, for me, it's just like, oh, well, it works this way. And she's like, why?
I like that. Interesting. All right.
No.
Hyder does say semantics. If the daughter learned, she wasn't taught. She learned what was merely professed. I like to emphasize the learner learning rather than the professor professing. Yeah, very good. Charles McCune says, I'm letting the kids house hack and paying them to manage their property.
In
hey,
college?
Yes, I believe I forget they're of that college age. Or
I
just
wish I had done that, because I was in Boca Raton for college during the financial crash. And so there were like $5 million houses selling for like $700K with like 8-9 bedrooms, and a bunch of my friends in college, their families would buy it and then they'd rent out all the bedrooms and they'd live in this nice house on a golf course for free.
Yeah.
It never made sense to me. And then years later, I'm like, wait, they sold it for how much?
And now you look, right? Rent by room is the strategy that is gaining traction and picking up out there. I even saw Derek, ADU guy. I think he's starting to look at that as an option to add into his strategy of building ADUs. Because I think I didn't watch the video completely, but I think it might be one way to alleviate some of the parking requirements. When you build an ADU or these units, there's certain requirements for parking, right? But if you do it like you get a home and you're renting out the rooms, they haven't got to that point yet, I think, where you have the parking restrictions. Yeah.
I'm kind of in the middle of a city fight on that right now, and it's not affecting me, but Mark, we've talked before about how I have student rentals. I've got stuff for Loyola and Tulane University. And during COVID, a lot of people went around the neighborhoods and they converted these old, because it's a nice neighborhood that's around these universities. They converted these older, kind of a little in shambles houses up to nice properties that have 4, 5, 6, 7 bedrooms. Or they've turned things that weren't bedrooms into bedrooms to try and get more, because more bedrooms, more rent. And the city is not happy about it, because you went from a relatively affordable neighborhood to the entire university area. All the properties went parabolic. And so now the city's coming in and saying, okay, well, you can't have more than 4 people in a property that aren't related. If you're going to do, and if you're going to do that, you need to have sprinklers. They're putting in all these crazy regulations where the sprinkler system is like $40,000, $50,000. Meanwhile, I think I'm 9 blocks from the university, and I'm like one of the only commercially zoned properties that's grandfathered in. And so I'm looking around, and all my stuff is 3 bedrooms. So I don't need to do the sprinklers or any of the other stuff. I'm just kind of, rent is in turmoil. Everyone's property is vacant. Rent and one of my units dropped from 3,900 to 2,400. So the market's all over the place, and all these properties that we're renting are now going to families who are going to live in them. So I'm kind of sitting here looking around like, do I sell and jump out, or do I wait for things to stabilize and then maybe I'll be one of the only games in town because everybody else panic sold?
Well, now it's your wife's decision, right?
It is. so she's working on that
decision. Yeah.
I was kind of like, hey, babe, hot potato.
I worry about that because I was years ago the vice chairman of planning and zoning for our city.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues I think about with rent by the room, because we've seen it now with short-term rentals of cities regulating them out.
Oh, yeah.
I think about that, and that would completely bust the model. That
somebody's going to get burnt.
They're going to start, I think, increasingly manage density. And that's what that is. They're going to begin if the problems increase, which they are, they're going to create some rule, because that's what government people do, is manage something to manage the density and the occupancy. And I think about that, and maybe it won't happen, but that's
Oh,
something I've thought
it's
about.
already happening.
Yeah.
In New Orleans, specifically. I don't know about other places, but New Orleans, it's I know properties that during COVID, for example, my building, I bought it for 1 1. It was probably went up to being a value of, let's say, 1 5 1 6, and then its value now is probably like, I don't know, 1 2 or 1 3. So I kind of don't care because it's still cash flowing very, very well. But I know a lot of people who bought a year or two after me at the peak.
Yeah.
And not only did they have less cash flow, but they're negative equity now. And they're the ones who are in the pinch, who have got to put in these sprinkler systems and all this other stuff. So someone's going to get burned bad. And I'm kind of torn between, do I sell and take my small victory, or do I ride it out and just kind of like hope the volatility leaves me with decent cash flow and a nice little equity position in a couple of years? I don't know that there's a right answer.
Yeah.
I wanted to say good morning to Jack. So Jack's Business Talk. You guys will be in for a treat today. I'm going to have a second live stream at 2:30 p.m. Eastern with Jack, and Yassik's going to make his debut on the channel. Yassik is in Jersey. He's in the school community, but he is going to be looking to invest in Pittsburgh, and he went to Jack's in-person meetup that Jack threw in Pittsburgh. So we're going to kind of give a recap on Jack's event that he threw there, and hopefully others follow suit and start maybe having in-person school meetups in their areas.
And Jack, that just reminded me, I've got to get back with you. I'm sorry, I forgot. I've got a lot of things going on, but I will get back with you on the business discussion.
Yeah.
Brandon, I have a question, Brandon. You're at the point now where so when I first started, I was living in a duplex, and the reason I went unit count was because I loved it until I had my first vacancy. And then I moved into a fourplex, and suddenly I went from one rental to 5 living in one, and the vacancies smoothed out more. And then I realized once I got over 20, the vacancies kind of didn't matter as much. And so once I hit a certain point, I was like, okay, unit count is cool, but kind of annoying once it gets over a certain amount, but super nice as far as smoothing out what your average month
smooth
was.
out some of the expenses. You're right.
So,
and that's what I'm trying to balance.
Where do you land on that?
I try to balance that too, because that's kind of goes to the Dion discussion, is having the least amount to get maximize the cash flow you need with the least amount of units, because it lessens the headaches, but it smooths out some of the expenses. What is that number? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah. Because I mean, like, technically, like, let's just be ridiculous. Hey, I want, I don't know, $1 million in cash flow per year. Fine. I'll buy a Home Depot. Let's just say you had the cash to do that. Cash outright. That's cool until it's vacant for 6 years.
Right.
You know?
And so what I'm doing right now is I've made the decision to go, I want half of my units in multifamily because they're also priced based off revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So the value of them is based off the revenue they generate. And then the other half I want as single family. So I'm trying to hit a 50-50 split because they're valued differently, the metrics. But then I'm thinking that 20 to 22 units is where I'm stopping, and then begin that harvester phase where I'm looking between 650, and I can see I can do this within 10 years or less. I can get to that $650 to $700 per unit cash flow. I have been saving up for reserves. Plus, I'm also starting with brand new construction, so the hassle factor is very minimal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, most of those repairs typically happen after year 7 to year 10. So by that time, I've saved up so much reserves. I've got the easy money. It's easier when you can stroke the check to pay for that repair and not have to even sweat it. So I'll have roughly 10 years. And so I start out at a lower reserve allocation. I start out at that 8%. And what I'm doing is every other year I add a percent to it, but my reserves are still growing rapidly, and I haven't had 2 little repairs in 4 years. 2.
And you would never consider doing something like putting that cash to work and just having an LOC on the portfolio? And just
Well,
roll
I
it?
do. Sorry, let me get a drink.
Mark, if you don't want us to get this technical,
No, how are you gonna talk on stage if you know?
I know. I do put that money in a money market account. So that
Okay.
reserve fund, it's not sitting as dead money in a bank. I am putting it right now in an account that I'm earning the trailing 12 months. I earned 4.5%, 4.55 to be exact.
Got it.
So, but I look at it not as lazy money. I really look at it as legacy money. It's keeping those properties in great condition and protecting them from any sideways or declines. I've got the reserves to take care of it in that temporary issue. I can handle those expenses. So I do look at that reserve money as legacy money. It's protecting those properties forever.
Okay, so this is interesting because having talked with Ben, and I can't remember Ben Mala and his finance guy, it is interesting to me how his model is effectively the same as a lot of us. So when I was talking with him at the bar that one time, he was like, "Yeah, once somewhere between 20 and 30," he says, properties is how much space he has in his brain. And so when he gets to a certain point and he's like, we're kind of done adding value and doing, this is a mature one that, is kind of annoying to manage. It's not my deal. He sells it and he 1031s into another product that he thinks it will either be a good long-term legacy asset or something fun, or, there's value there. And it's just funny to me that in his mind, 20 to 30 units is kind of like, yeah, I don't need my life any more complicated than that. But the buildings are just bigger.
It could be. Yeah, exactly that.
Would you ever, if you were at a point where you just had excess capital, excess equity, and you're kind of like, hey, I don't have any leverage on, would you go to larger assets, or you think you would just kind of, I'm good?
I'll be honest, that answer, I don't know, but I know I'm willing to adjust if I need to. I'm not there yet. So
Sure.
You never say never, because then that typically happens.
Okay, on that question from Denver though. So Cody Davis was on a few weeks ago, and he kind of was mentioning, for him, or his view of it is, he wants bigger assets in a sense because it's the easiest to transition or to pass down. So if you have a bunch of,
I heard that.
Yeah.
Yep,
so what's your take on that? Or I mean, have you ever thought of that way?
How many kids you having? I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, and the reason that my preference is larger scale, because my wife and I do want to have 4 or 5 kids, and my vision would be, okay, well, if my goal for me is to not need any income from the family business so that I can just live off my invest, because the simplest way I think about it is, because it's not all real estate, is I want to live off the investments that I have from the income I have. And there needs to be basically a filtration of, I don't want to use any of my active income or any of our business income. I only want to use the income from my assets. And so the only way for me to grow my lifestyle then would be to grow my asset base. But that puts a buffer in there so that if the business or anything else were to ever be disrupted or lost or whatever at any time, effectively my lifestyle wouldn't change. But to do that and put that same structure in place for my kids in the future, I have to hit a pretty reasonable scale if I'm going to have 5 for them all to maintain that same lifestyle that we made them accustomed to. So to some degree, the lifestyle they're accustomed to is also part of my choice. How big of a hill do I want to make for myself and my wife to climb? But depending on how big that buffer is, that snowball effect, as long as I think we're behind the inertia of it, won't be overly hard to keep at a reasonable pace, if that makes sense.
I look at it. I actually had this exact discussion yesterday. Mark knows I was at the state fair yesterday. That's what we do on Columbus Day. But
Nice.
I want our kids to not have it all from me.
Sure.
There was, and we were looking back, we were talking with another couple, the tough times my wife and I went through when we were young married and you're living on love and that's all you got, really were good times. And they also taught us a whole lot. And so I want my kids to go through those similar experiences. Yes, we will be watching. We're not going to let them sink. We're not going to let them fail. And I had that in my life too, but I want them to have that firsthand learning of what it's like when we were young married and you have very little. You appreciate when you've accomplished it that much more later in life. I don't, and maybe I don't think this is what you're saying, Denver. I don't want my kids to be any type of trust fund type of kid. They need to earn it because then they know how to handle it. And so I'm thinking through those things, but we were talking about it ourselves. We were talking about how little we lived on when we were first married, but we did smart things. We owned a duplex. We did some of the same stuff. Our first purchase was a duplex and we lived in one side and rented out the other. And we were talking, we had one single TV. That was it, and hand-me-down furniture and, having to eat at home, but the entertainment was being at home with my wife, and I'll just keep it there. But that was the entertainment. But those are the great experiences, and learning how to live on little allows you to grow.
So Charles was just saying it all transfers the same in a trust. But I do think Cody's point is more that of how the assets are going to be managed once they're transferred. Like, so for example, not to throw Frank under the bus or throw old guy Ari out there, but he owns real estate in multiple states, right? So like if he was to pass that down now, is the sibling or the child going to be able to handle managing these properties in all different states, right? So whereas if you were to transfer this to one bigger asset, then when you pass it down, he's looking at it from a simplicity standpoint of this person being able to manage it easier. So
that's another question of structure and scale. So that would matter less. Like, let's say hypothetically you had 100 units spread out over multiple states, because that means you're going to have local staff to you managing those people. So there's still going to be a place for them to go and learn and become involved with those assets at a young age. Whereas if it's all remote and you've got, let's say, a dozen spread across a half a dozen states, and you're doing it all through the mail and they never see anything, and the only hint of it is a pile of paper on the living room table, then that's going to be harder to pass on those skills and that knowledge and that curiosity, other than, just the money comes in the mail. There's no attachment to the business that way. There aren't any people to get to know. There aren't any, you're not going to be going to, so-and-so's, like the monthly gathering for whoever's birthday it is that month. Like all the things that you do in a business that really unite everyone into almost your second family just aren't going to be there.
Yeah. So we've been going for a little over an hour. Maybe we'll wrap it up for Jack had a final question, I guess. He says, can you talk about how your dad is the only one that wants to see you do better than them, and how this holds true or not in the ORAT group? For example, I'm rooting for Ned, and I want to see him get the jet. I'll never hit that point. We aren't in the same sports ball game.
So what you're saying is no one cares for your success other than your parents. Truly.
I
Is
don't.
that what he's saying?
Not
Yeah.
no one cares, but it's like your father is the one that really is pushing for you to
Is
do
he trying to say
better
your
than him.
your dad is your biggest cheerleader? I guess.
Not cheerleader, but I'm trying to think. I know I saw this reel recently, and someone it's a reel that was on Instagram, and some influencer person was talking. Oh, Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey. There's a clip of him saying like his dad passed away, and then he realized that there's no one really out there that's pushing you or hoping for your success to be better than you or they were, in a sense.
I think this group wants success, and it is I think as a general rule, this group cheers on others' success. I believe that.
Sure.
I really genuinely believe that, or I wouldn't be a part of it.
It's very
But
rare to
yes,
find
I think
online.
there's a piece of it. Your parents care more, even more. I'll say it that way, even more of seeing you succeed. They get a special joy and want that even more so.
Yeah. I mean, like, so my dad wasn't necessarily a business builder. His brothers were. My dad was probably one of the most brilliant sales guys that's ever been in the city of New Orleans, as far as I'm concerned. We'd walk into a party and he would walk up and he could bump into 200 people and he would know their name, their kids' names, what sports they were in, what their last injury was, where they were going to college, and he could just that is a skill set that I will never have because I can barely remember the names of a lot of people that I'm regularly around all the time. It's just not the way my brain works. And so, but my dad was never really an investor. Like that was not his skill set. And his brothers, his family worked and they did that side of the equation. And my dad has always had my back for years and years and years. But he's never really understood the investing side, and he's always just wanted me to be happy. Whereas the people who want us to do better would be maybe his brothers. So that aspect is there, and I would tend to agree, but it's not necessarily like my father. It's more like the family has a bar set where they're like, hey, we want you to succeed. And maybe with our family it's a little different because my cousins and I's performance is tied to their retirement to some degree. Because that's just how family businesses work. But I do think that because lots of people say don't do business with family, and I just have such a different view of that because I grew up in a situation where I see the bad, the good, sometimes blood pressures get high, emotions get tangled, and it's messy. But everyone's on the same team and pushing in the same direction. And I think it's more of a group. Your family has your back, and that family doesn't necessarily need to be who you grew up with. It can be your friends and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be your dad or your mom or whoever. But
I want to circle back around to the original conversation of when is enough enough. I want to break it down into 3 categories of what everybody needs to think through.
Sure.
You've got when enough is enough. Are you a lifestyle investor based off the cash flow? You need to back into that with margin. Denver talked about that. You've got an equity growth type of person, and then you've got the business builder. They're a full-time investor and they're building a business. And I think you've got to look at what you're looking for in those 3 different categories to determine what is your ultimate goal, but then also look for having time, head towards that financial freedom so that you've got time to make an impact on your kids.
All right, great episode, fellas. I think we'll wrap it up there. I just want to remind everyone, Brandon's YouTube channel is in the chat, so go subscribe. But we're trying to get him to his 4,000 watch hours. So if you can, go over there, watch some videos, get his hours up. I see Hugo tuning in. What's up? Stay winning. I have a feeling Hugo will probably be going live. And usually he hops on real quick, and he usually goes live after this. So there's Hugo's channel there also. So go stay on the lookout for one of his lives. Jovi says, I think the quote about dads is from day one. You're opening my kids does better than me. Hey, Brett's tuning in. Sorry, man. We're wrapping things up. Um, yeah. So Denver, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully, we can make this a regular thing again. I know it's been a while. I know life is
I'm
getting busy
interested.
for
Give
you.
me a call. You got my number.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get you back on. Like I said, Brandon is going to be doing Tuesdays with me now. Cody Davis is Mondays, and we're probably going to get a regular scheduling with Justin Cambra soon also. So be on the lookout for that. Like I said, everyone, reminder, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, I'll be going live again with Jack and Yasik going over their Pittsburgh in-person meetup. So everyone have a good rest of the day.